Imagine for a moment that God has been watching in silence. The world moved on as if your pain didn't matter. They spoke against you, mocked your kindness, and called your patience weakness. Behind their laughter was cruelty, a cruelty that cut deep, one that broke pieces of your spirit that only God could see. You stayed quiet, not because you were powerless, but because you knew heaven was listening. There were nights you cried when no one noticed, days when you smiled through betrayal. You gave love where it wasn't returned. You offered forgiveness where none was deserved. They thought they had won, but what they didn't know was this: God was taking notes. Every tear you shed became evidence before his throne. Every wound became a testimony of endurance, and every moment of silence became a seed planted for divine justice. You see, there comes a time when heaven no longer stays silent. When the cruelty of others reaches its limit, God steps in, not with words, but with power. His favor becomes your voice. His hand becomes your defense. His presence becomes your proof that you were never forgotten. The same mouths that spread lies will one day speak your praise. The same eyes that watched you fall will witness your rising. God's justice doesn't always come in thunder. It often comes in timing, and his timing, though silent, is perfect. While they were busy trying to bury you, he was preparing the soil for your rebirth. While they plotted your downfall, he was writing your comeback story. The cruelty they showed will not go unanswered, for God has seen it all, and his favor is already at work, turning every wrong into your testimony of victory. There is a sacred silence before every divine judgment, a moment where heaven observes before it intervenes. Perhaps that is the season you have been living in. But hear this clearly. You are now stepping into the season where God's favor speaks louder than their cruelty. The season where your faith becomes your reward. The season where you no longer explain yourself, because God himself will do the explaining through what he's about to do in your life. So lift your head. You don't need to fight back with words. You don't need to seek revenge. Your job was never to make them see. It was to endure long enough for God to reveal. And reveal he will. Every hidden cruelty will be exposed. Every injustice will be corrected, and every lie will crumble under the weight of divine truth. For God has seen their cruelty, and now his favor will speak justice over your life. There are moments in life when it feels as though cruelty goes unnoticed, when the people who hurt you walk freely, smiling as if their hands are clean. They speak lies, spread rumors, and manipulate others to see you through a distorted lens. You stand there silent, wondering if God saw what they did. You question if heaven was watching when they mocked your pain or twisted your truth. But hear this clearly. Nothing escapes his sight. The God who sees the sparrow fall also sees the tear that slides silently down your face. He has recorded every word they said, every deceit they spread, and every wound they inflicted when no one else was around to witness it. You see, the cruelty of others may seem hidden, but to God it is written in light. He doesn't miss a single moment. He watches when people disguise their malice as jokes, when they smile to your face but plant thorns behind your back. Every action that wounded you became a line in the divine record, not for your destruction, but for your vindication. For while they thought their cruelty was unnoticed, heaven was documenting every detail with precision, and one day those records will speak, not through your words, but through God's justice manifested in your life. When Joseph's brothers threw him into a pit, it looked as if no one was watching. Their cruelty was clothed in jealousy, and their betrayal disguised as a solution, but God saw. The pit was not hidden from his eyes. The lies told to their father were not unheard in heaven. Every act of cruelty that was meant to destroy Joseph became evidence for God's purpose. The same brothers who stripped him of his robe would one day bow before him, not because Joseph sought revenge, but because God remembered the injustice and turned it into destiny. So it is with you. You may not have spoken back, but your silence was not forgotten. You may have forgiven, but forgiveness does not erase God's memory of the wrongs done against you. The world forgets quickly, but heaven never forgets truth. The Almighty keeps a record not to punish immediately, but to establish perfect justice in His time. The cruelty that broke your heart will one day stand as the reason He blesses you beyond measure. Gip yisyo. Understand this. When you cry out in secret, your tears become prayers, and prayers are not lost. They rise like incense before the throne of God. Every tear you've shed for someone who wronged you has been collected by the hand of the divine. Every time you whispered, "God, you know what they did," He indeed knew, and He took note. The silence you endured was not ignored. It became a part of heaven's courtroom testimony. Those who inflict pain often believe they can escape the consequences of their cruelty because time has passed. They mistake God's patience for permission. But divine patience is not absence, it is preparation. God allows them enough time to show their hearts fully, so when justice arrives, it arrives complete, without question or confusion. You won't need to expose them, because their own actions will. Life will bring their deeds back to them in a mirror, and the same pain they once delivered will now echo through their own hearts. God's justice is not revenge, it's restoration. He doesn't just bring them down, He lifts you up in a way that makes the story whole. When His favor steps in, it not only heals what was broken, it makes your very existence a testimony that cruelty never wins. That's why you must never think your suffering was wasted. Every act of cruelty they showed you is now a brick in the foundation of your elevation. The record is being written, and soon it will be read aloud through blessings that even your enemies cannot deny. So when you feel unseen, remind yourself heaven is not blind. When you feel forgotten, remember God is keeping score, not to destroy, but to deliver. For every time they mistreated you, there is a reward stored in heaven waiting for release. Every hidden cruelty is about to face divine exposure. Every unspoken pain is about to find its voice through the favor that will surround your life. Because God has seen their cruelty, and He has written it in His book of remembrance, the day is coming when that book will be opened, and the same eyes that once looked upon you with pride and mockery will see the hand of God write justice in golden letters across your destiny. Their cruelty was temporary, but His record is eternal, and when He moves, every page of your pain will turn into a chapter of glory. There is a sacred kind of power in staying silent when everything inside you wants to scream. When the lies spread faster than truth, when cruelty wraps itself in the disguise of laughter, and when those you loved most turned your kindness into a weapon against you, you stayed quiet. The world may have mistaken your silence for surrender, but heaven saw it as strength. Because silence, in the face of cruelty, is not weakness. It is faith on display. You could have fought back. You could have exposed them, humiliated them the way they did to you, but something inside whispered, "Be still." That whisper was not fear, it was wisdom. It was God reminding you that the battle was never yours to fight. When you chose silence, you didn't lose your voice, you surrendered it to the one whose voice can shake the earth. You handed over your pain to the judge who sees both sides, who measures motives, and who never misinterprets a broken heart. When Christ stood before His accusers, He spoke no defense. He didn't shout when mocked, didn't argue when condemned. His silence was not a sign of defeat. It was a declaration of divine restraint. He knew heaven would have the final word. The same truth applies to you. When you held your peace while they slandered you, you stood in the same strength that carried the Son of God through betrayal and injustice. You reflected a power that comes not from pride, but from trust. Silence has a language all its own. It speaks louder than revenge. It tells the world that you refuse to lower yourself to the level of those who tried to drag you down. Every time you kept calm when your name was attacked, you wrote your strength into eternity's memory. Every time you chose peace instead of confrontation, you built spiritual muscle that cruelty cannot destroy. Your silence was a fortress, unseen but unbreakable. Those who misunderstood your silence believed you were weak because they couldn't imagine having that kind of control. Weak people scream to be heard. Strong souls whisper to heaven and wait. You didn't need to prove yourself because truth doesn't need defenders. It needs time. And when truth has had enough time, it always reveals itself with force. That's the kind of power God is about to unleash in your life. Think about the seed buried in the soil. It says nothing, it makes no sound, but beneath the ground something powerful is happening. While the world sees silence, heaven sees growth. Your quiet season was not a pause, it was preparation. The cruelty they thought silenced you was the very thing that strengthened your roots. You were not being buried, you were being planted. And when God decides, your life will break through the ground so magnificently that no one will ever question why you stayed silent. Silence is a test of trust. It's easy to speak when you're wronged, but it takes divine faith to stay still and say, God, you handle this. When you stayed quiet, you told heaven that you believed more in God's justice than in your own defense. You believed that his timing would prove everything your words could not. And now, the time for that proof is coming. The same mouths that mocked your stillness will soon question how you rose so high without fighting back. They'll realize that your silence wasn't the end of the story, it was the turning point. Because when you held your peace, you gave God permission to speak. And when God speaks, his voice drowns every lie, silences every critic, and shatters every weapon formed against you. You see, true strength isn't in striking back, it's in standing tall while the storm rages and saying nothing, knowing that heaven heard it all. Those who confused your calm for weakness are about to witness a strength they can't comprehend, the kind of strength that comes from divine favor. They'll see that while they were busy trying to ruin your name, God was writing your restoration. So do not regret your silence. It was your greatest shield. The very moments you bit your tongue and chose not to retaliate became sacred evidence of your faith. And faith, when tested by fire, never returns empty. God will reward your restraint. He will honor your stillness. And soon, the silence that once seemed unbearable will thunder with his justice. You didn't lose by staying silent. You won. You may not have seen it then, but your silence spoke the loudest prayer of all. God, I trust you. And that prayer never goes unanswered. There comes a moment in every wounded soul's life when words are no longer enough. You've explained, defended, clarified, and forgiven until your heart grew tired. You tried to make people see the truth, but they chose the lies that entertained them over the truth that challenged them. So you stopped speaking, not because you had nothing to say, but because you realized that your vindication would not come from your mouth, it would come from God's favor. Favor is heaven's way of speaking when your voice has been silenced by cruelty. It's how God answers the injustice you couldn't fix yourself. It's not a whisper, it's a declaration that shakes the atmosphere. Favor turns heads, opens doors, and rewrites stories that others tried to erase. It is God saying to the world, "This is my child, and I will not allow them to be mocked any longer." You see, God doesn't always confront your enemies with wrath. Sometimes He confronts them with your success. He makes your blessings so undeniable that they become living proof of His justice. When people doubted your worth, favor becomes your evidence. When they try to ruin your reputation, favor rebuilds it in gold. When they thought your story was over, favor writes a new chapter that starts with elevation and ends with silence from your critic. Think about Joseph once more. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused, and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. His name was tarnished, his reputation destroyed. But when God decided to speak, He didn't send thunder from heaven. He sent favor. That favor lifted Joseph from the prison to the palace. It didn't require his words. It required his endurance. His rise became his justice. His elevation became his testimony. And the same brothers who caused his downfall had to witness his divine promotion. That is how God operates. He lets favor do the talking. He doesn't shout to prove a point. He blesses you so visibly that even those who despised you cannot deny that His hand is on your life. When favor speaks, it silences gossip, cancels false stories, and exposes hidden cruelty without a single argument. Those who once laughed at you begin to wonder how you managed to stand again, but what they fail to understand is that it wasn't luck. It was the justice of heaven manifesting through favor. You don't need to chase revenge when God's favor is chasing you. You don't have to worry about clearing your name. Favor will clear it for you. It will move through places you've never been and speak for you in rooms you never entered. It will turn strangers into advocates and enemies into witnesses of your restoration. Favor is not just a blessing. It's a language. It speaks fluently in the dialect of divine justice. The cruel may think they've escaped, but they cannot hide from favor's testimony. For when God's hand rests upon you, it changes everything around you. Those who conspire to block your path will watch the very door they tried to close swing wide open for you. The opportunities they thought they stole will return multiplied. The peace they tried to take will overflow like a river that cannot be contained. Favor doesn't just restore what was lost. It redeems what was broken. It doesn't just lift you. It humbles those who tried to crush you. When God blesses you openly, it becomes a mirror for those who once rejoiced at your pain. They begin to see that while they were sowing cruelty, you were being prepared for greatness. That is how heaven restores balance, through favor that speaks louder than pain, louder than gossip, louder than every lie. You may have been silent for a long time, but now your blessings will speak. Your peace will speak. Your joy will speak. Every answered prayer will become a voice of justice echoing across your life. And the beauty of it all is this: you won't have to lift a single finger. God's favor will do all the talking. So hold your peace. Don't worry about proving your worth. Let your favor do that. Because the time is coming when you won't have to say, "God saw what they did." Everyone around you will see the evidence for themselves. They'll realize that while cruelty spoke loudly for a season, favor speaks eternally. And once God's favor starts speaking on your behalf, no voice on earth can silence it. Cruelty in its moment feels final. It feels like the end of your story. Like the betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, and the rejection have buried you too deep to ever rise again. Yet, what they meant to destroy you, God is quietly transforming into the very force that will lift you higher. The pain they caused was not a dead end. it was the turning point. Their cruelty, no matter how calculated or cold, is becoming the catalyst that propels you into your destiny. When people hurt you, it's natural to see only the wound, the bleeding of trust, the ache of disbelief, the echo of "why me" in the silence of your room. But God, in His infinite wisdom, sees the wound differently. He sees the pain as pressure, the kind that births strength. He knows that what crushes you momentarily will carve you permanently into something unbreakable. He allows their cruelty to become the chisel that shapes your character, your discernment, and your faith. What they meant for evil becomes the raw material for your transformation. Think about it. Every great story of faith, every hero of light, was once a victim of cruelty. Joseph's betrayal led him to Egypt, where his purpose was born. David's rejection by Saul made him a man after God's heart. Job's suffering deepened his understanding of divine sovereignty. And Christ's crucifixion, humanity's greatest act of cruelty, became the greatest display of redemption. God has always used cruelty as the soil in which destiny grows. Your story is no different. There's a mysterious beauty in how heaven reuses pain. The very thing that should have broken you becomes the foundation of your spiritual rise. The rejection you faced taught you self-worth. The betrayal taught you who truly belongs in your life. The abandonment taught you to walk with God when no one else stood beside you. Every cruel act became a divine classroom where you learned wisdom that no comfort could ever teach. You were never being punished, you were being prepared. Cruelty doesn't cancel purpose, it confirms it. When you attract cruelty, it's often because your spirit carries something powerful. People attack what they can't control and despise what they can't understand. You didn't face their cruelty because you were weak. You faced it because you were chosen. God allowed it because He knew you could endure what others could not. And through that endurance, He is birthing a strength in you that will outlast every wound. There's a reason diamonds are born under pressure. Without it, they remain ordinary stones. The pressure doesn't destroy them, it perfects them. The same is true of you. Their cruelty didn't define you, it refined you. Every moment of suffering polished your faith, stripped away pride, and deepened your compassion. You became wiser, stronger, and more spiritually awake because of what they tried to do. You see, what they intended to bury you with is now the platform upon which God will raise you. And when He raises you, it will not be subtle. Those who laughed when you fell will see that their laughter became the echo that announced your resurrection. The cruelty they used to break you will become the story that makes you unstoppable. Every lie they told will serve as proof of how truth never needed defense. Every door they closed will lead you to one you were meant to walk through all along. You will look back and realize that nothing they did was wasted. God turned every wound into wisdom, every loss into leverage, and every tear into testimony. One day soon, you'll thank God not just for delivering you, but for allowing their cruelty to happen. Because you'll see that it didn't destroy you, it revealed you. It brought forth the version of you that no comfort could have produced. It taught you to depend on God, not people. It showed you that divine favor needs no approval from those who tried to harm you. So when you think of their cruelty, stop seeing it as a curse. See it as a catalyst, a fire that refined you, a storm that strengthened your roots, a betrayal that redirected your destiny. They thought they were ending your story, but God was only turning the page. The cruelty that once crushed your heart is the very reason you're about to rise higher than you ever dreamed. Because God doesn't waste pain. He transforms it into power. And soon, the same cruelty that tried to break you will be the reason you soar. When you've been wounded by cruelty, the hardest part is waiting for justice. You cry out to heaven, and it feels as though the sky remains silent. You watch those who wronged you live without consequence, walking freely as though their actions were invisible to God. And in that silence, a dangerous thought whispers, maybe God forgot? But he didn't. He never does. The delay you feel is not neglect, it's precision. God's timing is never random. It is divinely orchestrated to bring the greatest glory, the deepest healing, and the most undeniable justice. We humans live in minutes and hours. God operates in seasons and purposes. We look for quick fixes. He looks for complete restoration. What seems like delay is actually divine alignment. Every second of waiting, every unanswered prayer, every long night of asking why has been measured perfectly by his wisdom. He is not slow. He is strategic. He knows that premature justice can ruin the lesson and that delayed justice can strengthen the soul. He waits until every piece of your story fits his design, until your heart is healed enough to carry the victory without bitterness, and until their actions have ripened enough to reveal their true consequences. Imagine if Joseph had been released from prison too early. He might have returned to slavery or lived forgotten. But when God decided to move, he did it at the precise moment Pharaoh had a dream, an event that elevated Joseph from prisoner to ruler in a single day. That's not coincidence. That's divine timing. You see, God's silence doesn't mean he's idle. It means he's setting the stage for something greater than you could imagine. When his plan unfolds, it doesn't just restore what you lost. It redefines your future. There's a hidden mercy in delay. If God acted the moment you demanded justice, your heart might not have been ready for the blessing that would follow. Sometimes he allows time to soften your anger, to purify your motives, and to remind you that his justice is not revenge, it's redemption. He wants you to rise without resentment, to succeed without seeking applause, and to walk in victory without carrying venom. So he waits. And while you wait, he works. In the unseen realm, things are already shifting. God is aligning hearts, circumstances, and opportunities in a way that no human hand could manipulate. He is preparing the exact moment when your favor will speak, when your breakthrough will arrive, and when his justice will thunder across your life so clearly that no one can deny his involvement. You may not see movement now, but faith is about trusting the hand of God, even when it moves in silence. Consider this: when you plant a seed, you don't dig it up the next day to check if it's growing. You trust the process, even when the soil looks still. That's how God's timing works. Beneath what looks like stillness, life is forming. Roots are deepening. The miracle is preparing to break through, and when it does, it won't be small or quiet. It will arrive in such divine perfection that even your enemies will say, "This could only be God." So if you feel overlooked, know this: he's not ignoring you, he's positioning you. The longer the wait, the greater the unveiling. God often lets the enemy build his pride just high enough before he brings it down in full view of those who doubted you. He allows their confidence to mature so that when his justice arrives, it humbles them completely and lifts you undeniably. That's not delay, that's design. Trust the rhythm of heaven. What feels like waiting is really preparation for elevation. The same God who allowed you to walk through the storm is the God who will command it to end exactly when it serves his purpose. And when it does, you will see that every second of silence was sacred. Every unanswered prayer was part of his strategy. Every painful moment was a thread in a larger masterpiece of justice and mercy intertwined. God's timing may test your patience, but it will never betray your faith. When he moves perfectly. When he blesses completely. And when he brings justice, He does it in such precision that even the cruel will have no defense. They'll realize that the delay was never neglect. It was divine timing working in your favor all along. So rest your heart. The clock of heaven never runs late. The time is near when God will turn his silence into a sound of victory, and it will be worth every tear you ever cried. There's a reason God told you to stay silent while they mocked you. There's a reason he didn't let you defend yourself when lies surrounded your name. It wasn't because he wanted you to stay hidden. It was because he was preparing a stage. And when the time comes for your rising, it won't happen in secret. God will lift you in a way that everyone who watched you suffer will have no choice but to watch you shine. You see, divine justice is not whispered. It is witnessed. God could bless you quietly, but that would not fulfill his purpose. His favor is meant to be seen, not for your pride, but for his glory. When the cruelty of others was loud, God stayed silent. But now his favor will speak louder than their words ever could. Those who doubted you will see his hand upon your life, and those who laughed at your pain will see that the same God they ignored has chosen to honor you in plain sight. There is something profoundly poetic about how God restores his children. He doesn't do it behind closed doors. He does it in the open, in the same places where you were humiliated, dismissed, or forgotten. He allows those who wounded you to become the audience of your restoration. That's not revenge. It's revelation. It's God showing the world that purity, patience, and faith always triumph over cruelty, deceit, and pride. When Joseph was taken from the pit to the palace, his brothers, the same men who betrayed him, were forced to come before him in need. They didn't recognize him at first, because the one they left for dead didn't look like the man standing before them in glory. That's what God is about to do with you. Those who walked away from you will not recognize what he's made of you. Their cruelty thought it buried you, but all it did was plant you. Now the harvest is coming, and it will be visible for all to see. Your rising will not be quiet, because it's not just about you. It's about the vindication of God's name. Every time you chose grace over anger, he took note. Every time you prayed for those who wronged you instead of cursing them, heaven wrote it down. Every moment you endured pain in silence became a testimony waiting for its day of release. And now, that day approaches. God is going to raise you so high that your very existence becomes a message. This is what happens when you trust God through injustice. There are blessings that God gives privately, peace in the storm, comfort in the night. But there are also blessings meant for the public eye. These are the blessings that silence mockers, heal reputations, and shift perceptions. When God begins to move, people who once avoided your name will start mentioning it with respect. The same circles that excluded you will begin to open doors. That's how divine favor speaks. It doesn't ask for recognition, it commands it. This is why you must not despise the years of waiting or the seasons of obscurity. God was not hiding you from opportunity. He was hiding you from contamination. He knew your purity needed protection, and now that you've been refined by pain, he can display you without fear of pride. He will lift you in such a way that your story itself becomes a sermon. People will see your rise and whisper, "Only God could have done that." Understand something deeper. God's justice is not only about correction, it's about demonstration. He wants the world to see that his children cannot be destroyed by cruelty. He wants every onlooker, every betrayer, every silent witness to realize that divine favor rewrites stories no cruelty can erase. When you rise, you won't need to remind them of what they did. Your elevation will do it for you. And when that moment comes, walk in grace. Don't boast, don't gloat, simply stand tall and let the light of God's favor speak. The same mouths that once cursed you will bless you. The same hearts that envied you will be convicted. The same hands that pushed you down will reach out for peace. Because when God exalts a person, it's never subtle. He ensures that every eye that once looked down on you now looks up in awe. Your rising will be undeniable. It will be so evident that even those who despised you will have to confess that God was always with you. And that's the beauty of divine justice. It doesn't just lift you, it teaches the world a lesson about who He is. So, hold on. You may have cried in private, but you will rise in public. You may have been mocked in silence, but you will be honored before all. And when you do, remember, your elevation is not just a comeback. It's the evidence that God saw every tear, heard every prayer, and turned every cruelty into a crown. There comes a point in your healing when you realize you no longer crave revenge, not because what they did was small, but because you've grown too deeply in God to desire their downfall. You no longer wish them pain, you wish them awareness. That's when you know the divine has taken over. True justice doesn't roar through retaliation. It arrives wrapped in peace. It's not loud, not violent, not bitter. It's calm, steady, and undeniable. It is the kind of justice that only God can orchestrate, one that restores your soul without staining your hands. When cruelty wounded you, your first instinct may have been to fight back. You wanted them to feel what they made you feel, to understand the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the silent suffering. But God whispered, "Be still. I will fight for you." That whisper wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, because revenge can only give temporary satisfaction, but peace, born of divine justice, gives eternal rest. God knew that if you sought vengeance, you'd end up carrying the same darkness that broke you. So He protected your heart by calling you to silence, not submission. He told you to walk away, not because you were defeated, but because you were being preserved. The world glorifies revenge. It tells you that justice must be loud and merciless. But heaven's justice is different. It rebuilds you while it corrects them. God doesn't destroy your enemies to prove His power. He transforms you to prove His glory. He doesn't bring your oppressors to ruin instantly, because He often uses time as a teacher. The delay you've endured is not God's neglect. It's mercy working on both sides. While He heals your wounds, He also gives them time to face their conscience, to wrestle with guilt, and to see themselves through the same lens they once used to harm you. Peace is the highest form of victory. It means you've risen above what tried to poison you. It means you've chosen healing over hatred. And that choice shakes the foundations of darkness more than any act of revenge ever could. Because when you refuse to hate, you deny evil its purpose. You rob cruelty of its power. The enemy expects you to become bitter. When you become peaceful instead, you confuse hell itself. That is divine justice, when the one who was wronged stands taller, freer and calmer than those who caused the pain. Think of David when he had the chance to kill Saul. Saul had hunted him, slandered him, and sought his death. Yet when David found him sleeping, he did not strike. He cut off a piece of Saul's robe as proof that he could have, but chose not to. That's what true justice looks like. Not the victory of the hand, but the triumph of the heart. David's restraint didn't weaken him, it defined him. And God, seeing that purity, later crowned him king. You see, when you let peace guide you, God ensures the crown lands on your head and not theirs. Every time you refused to fight back, heaven recorded it. Every time you walked away with dignity, you passed a spiritual test. And now, that peace you chose will become the very weapon God uses to display his justice. Those who mistook your calm for cowardice will soon realize it was divine control. You didn't stay quiet because you couldn't respond. You stayed quiet because you were letting God handle what you couldn't fix. And when he handles it, he doesn't just balance the scales, he resets the entire stage. A day will come when your peace will speak louder than any revenge ever could. They'll see your growth, your blessings, your glow, and it will pierce their hearts more deeply than your anger ever could. That's how God works. He doesn't let your enemies see your tears forever. He lets them see your transformation. And when they do, it won't be to make them envy you. It will be to make them understand what happens when someone is favored by God. So rest. You don't need to plan anyone's downfall. You don't need to wish them pain. Your peace is already working as your protest. Your success is your proof. Your stillness is your statement. Let them see you rise and wonder how you did it without breaking. Let them see you smile after all that was meant to destroy you, because that's what divine justice looks like. When the one who was wronged walks in such peace that even their enemies know God fought for them. When favor speaks, you won't need revenge. When peace reigns, you won't need explanations. And when God brings justice, it won't come with noise. It will come with undeniable evidence that you were chosen, protected, and lifted. So keep your heart pure, your hands clean, and your mind steady. Justice is coming, but it will not roar in wrath. It will whisper in peace, and that whisper will echo louder than all their cruelty combined. Now, as we come to the end of this message, take a deep breath and remember, none of what you went through was wasted. Every tear, every betrayal, every cruel word, they were not the end of your story. They were the soil where your divine purpose began to grow. God has seen their cruelty. He has watched every injustice unfold, every lie spoken against you, every silent wound that no one else could understand. And though it seemed for a time that heaven was quiet, it was not still. His silence was strategy, his delay was design, and his justice now is near. You did not lose by walking away. You did not fail by forgiving. You did not look weak when you chose peace instead of revenge. You were being refined in the fire of restraint, strengthened in the waiting, and shaped into someone who could carry the weight of divine favor without letting pride destroy it. The cruelty of others was never the conclusion. It was the catalyst. It revealed who you were, and it revealed who they were. And now the same God who witnessed your suffering will write the final word, not in anger, but in elevation. There is a moment coming, sooner than you think, when everything will make sense. The pain that once made you question your worth will become the proof of your calling. The betrayal that broke your heart will become the bridge that carried you into your destiny. God's favor is about to speak justice over your life, and when it does, no voice of cruelty, no weapon of deceit, and no whisper of envy will be able to silence it. The same mouths that mocked you will fall silent in awe. The same hands that tried to harm you will tremble when they see what God has done. Your story will not end in bitterness. It will end in beauty. You will not live defined by their cruelty, but by His compassion. You will not rise through revenge, but through peace. For the justice of heaven is not measured in punishment, it is measured in restoration. And the restoration that is coming will be so complete that it will feel as if the pain never existed. So lift your head. You are not forgotten. You are favored. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. You are not abandoned. You are about to be revealed. The season of silence is over, and the voice of favor is about to speak. Let the world see that the one who walks with God can never be buried by cruelty, because the same ground that covered you will soon bloom with the evidence of his glory. For God has seen their cruelty, and now his favor will speak justice over your life, and when it does, the world will know that you were never the victim of man's cruelty, but the vessel of God's victory.